You're listening to the Faith Breathed Hope podcast, episode number 44. Today, I speak with author, speaker, and goal and dream fulfillment coach, Tammie Polk, on achieving her goals when her body quit. Welcome to the Faith Breathed Hope podcast, where we gain inspiration and motivation from others who share their touching stories of renewing hope and discovering purpose in any circumstance. I'm your host, Christina Reisinger, and today we will be encouraged by another tremendously inspirational topic that will embolden you to release fear, begin taking small steps forward, and move into your God-given purpose to live and serve in this life. Join me for today's story. Hey, Tammie, how are you?
I am great. And yourself?
I am good. It's so good to have you here on Faith Breathed Hope. So one thing I would love to have you share is something that you find interesting about yourself before we really get into your story.
Something interesting about me. I have an interesting relationship with cookies. I am a cookie connoisseur. If you ask me what my favorite comfort food is, I'm going to say cookies. I'm known to have at least 9 different types of cookies in my house at one time.
Wow.
Be they store-bought, bakery, or sent to me by a client. I need cookies to make it through most days.
Oh, goodness. What's your favorite kind of cookie? Do you have a favorite, or you just like a
oatmeal raisin?
Oatmeal raisin. All right. That's awesome.
Yes.
I myself am a cheesecake person or a red velvet cake person, but cookies.
You know what? We would get along.
Yes. You like cheesecake too?
I like cheesecake and I like red velvet cake.
Awesome. I think my mother makes the best, but I might be a little bit biased. So would you like to start telling our audience a little bit more about you and your story? And we're here to talk about how you're able to achieve your goals when your body quit. And so that's going to be really interesting. And I'd like to have you just share your story first.
Okay. First and foremost, I've always been an overachiever. I actually graduated from high school when I was 16 years old. I finished my coursework at 15, actually. Oh, wow. And the only reason why I even had a senior year was because my mom's brain cells were stuck on the fact that my birthday was in September, and it's not. It's in August. So she was worried that I would be 16 going into college, which was not the case. So my entire senior year was unnecessary. But just, I've always been one who has had a no excuses, a no excuses mentality. I didn't let, even growing up, I didn't let bullies keep me from being a high achiever. I didn't allow being one of 2 Black students in a predominantly white school, the other one being my brother, to keep me from being a high achiever. I didn't let naysayers keep me from being a high achiever. So I carried that into my work as an educator. I carried it into my business as a coach, author, and speaker. But I did hit a point where my body quit. In 2020, before the world went splat, I started to have some physical issues. I woke up and went to sleep with headaches. I woke up and went to sleep with nausea. I was extremely fatigued. I was just sluggish throughout the day. And come February, I started having numbness and tingling on the left side of my body. The left side of my body basically quit.
Wow.
So on Valentine's Day of all days, I finally went to the doctor to get myself checked out. And basically, I was told that I shouldn't be walking, that I should feel terrible, and that I shouldn't even be alive. My body was compensating in ways that the medical team could not figure out what my body was doing, because there was no way that my iron level could be 4 and normal is 40, and I still be standing and didn't have to have a blood transfusion. So I'm going to all of these doctors. I went from this primary doctor to my gynecologist, then I went to a physiatrist, and I'm going to a physical therapist, and then I went to a radiologist, and now the next thing I'm seeing a neurologist, because they couldn't understand what was going on with my body. They couldn't find in my system what was compensating or what else was being pulled on to keep me alive. But during this time, I was still publishing. I have been blessed to pen, publish, and record 136 print, audio, and digital books since September 2015.
Wow.
And I had a goal. My goal was to get to 125 published books by August 11, 2020, which was my birthday. And my body literally started to deteriorate. There were days when I could not walk. There were days when I would get overheated to the point to where I would either have to eat inordinate amounts of ice or sit in front of my refrigerator or my freezer with the door open sometimes. And so I'm going to all of these different doctors, having all of these different tests for them to tell me that they wanted to start treating me for multiple sclerosis.
Oh, no.
And the physiatrist looked at me and he said, I know you mentioned that you are an author. If you have any writing projects going on right now, I would get them done, because if we're right, there's a 60% chance that you will lose the use of your hands. And I cried.
I can imagine.
Because I'm sitting there saying, I have this goal. I have these kids. I'm my husband, what am I going to do if I can't use my hands? And then I began to struggle. I couldn't carry a fork. I couldn't carry an empty plate. And in my left hand, I had to use my right hand is my dominant hand anyway. But if I was carrying something, I either had to make sure that it was in my right hand and that it wasn't heavy, or I would have to tuck it in the fold of my arm and carry it like a football. So here I am typing and doing everything humanly possible, typing until both of my hands would literally be like, you know what? You're not doing anything else. We're done. And all the while, I'm dealing with clients who, just wouldn't give any grace, who simply didn't understand that this is what I was, this is what I was going through. This was my life at this time. And so I remember going through the treatments and having the MRIs and the CT scans and being told that there was spotting on my brain and that there was spotting on my spine, and just having to go to all of these different doctors, all of these appointments, and then you know going through so many blood tests that the fold of my right arm was literally blue, because those are my best veins. And and my right arm just hurt because that was the best place to get blood. That was the best place for the IVs or anything like that, because they couldn't use my hands. So here I am, having to be told that I'm going to have this spinal tap that's going to put me on my back for 3 weeks. And so I have the spinal tap. I'm not allowed to move for 3 weeks outside of going to the bathroom. And I remember I started to have dreams where Hebrews 12 was real. I could see the great cloud of witnesses, and they were all crying because I had allowed my condition to keep me from reaching my goal. And each one of them was someone that one of those books that I had left to do was meant to help. And I woke up from that dream. It was the 6th of August. I was finally able to move. And I said, I can't let this happen. Now, mind you, I had also been hospitalized twice because my muscles around my heart went into heart attack mode. My heart did not. So I basically had what they called a musculoskeletal or heartless heart attack. Had two.
Okay.
So now I'm on prednisone, hydrocodone, iron, a probiotic, a multivitamin, and a prescription strength stool softener so that none of that would kill me. Talk about needing cookies. And lots of them. But so here I am. I go and I sit on my couch, and I said to myself, I says, okay, God, if I can't use my hands, I'm going to use my voice. I was 27 books away from my goal. I had 4 days to figure it out. I recorded 27 20 to 60-minute audiobooks in 4 days.
Oh, wow.
Sitting in the same position on my couch. And I remember it was literally 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time on August 10th. And I was walking down the hallway, going back to my room. My legs started to give. And as I let myself slide down to the floor so that I could sit still for a moment, I looked into the eyes of my 17-year-old and I said, I'm done. I did it. So I got up the next morning, which was my birthday. And a graphic designer friend of mine had been working on the graphics that I had saved in Canva. So on the morning of my birthday, I spent the first couple of hours uploading all of my audios to PayHip, because it was the only platform that I knew of where I could upload an audio without having to have a physical book like Audible does. And I announced that I'd done it. And people all over the world were like, you're kidding. With everything that you are going through, you did it. So they got to see me pushing past the medications, past the nosebleeds, past the numbness, the tingling, the limping, the not being able to stand sometimes, or having to press against the wall to force my legs to move. My body quit. It quit. Then 2 weeks after my birthday, my husband was involved in a car accident right around the corner from our house. And I had to get out and walk half a mile to find him. I had never walked so fast in my life. My legs were burning. But I got to my husband. So I know that a lot of people hate to hear stories like mine, because they'll say, well, that was you. Not everybody has, has that resolve. Not everybody has that mindset. But I've always told people, given what I went through in 2020, there's not an excuse you can give me for not achieving your goals, except for money, because just about everybody was broke in 2020. to be honest. But I tell my story not to brag, but to show people what's possible.
Amen.
There were days when I would have to go and stand in a hot shower for my muscles to relax, for me to even be able to breathe properly. But not only did I reach that goal, but I was working on a devotional series at the time called Pray and Ponder, where I was releasing devotional books according to their chronological order in the Bible. Mm-hmm. I finished that collection in December of 2020.
Wow.
3 months after being released from the care of my neurologist, because my MRIs and my CT scans were finally clear.
Sounds like you've had quite the year. Just for clarification, you said 125 books. Is that what you said, or 130?
My goal that I was working on during that time was 125. Okay. I ended the year with 134 after finishing the devotional series. And now I'm at 136. Because yeah. Yeah, because when I told God that I was going to take a break from writing, he had somebody to preach a message that just messed all that up.
You have been able to actually write all of these books and record the audio for all of them. And when did you start this?
September 2015.
2015.
My journey period, September 2015. Okay. But the 27 audiobooks were done between August 6th and August 10th.
Oh man. And you're just cranking things out. This is like an overachiever's like dream. Like I'm cranking these things out on steroids or something. Wow. I tell you what, as a writer, I don't know if I could even drown out the distractions enough to even get one book out in that amount of time, much less 27. Wow, that's amazing. And the Bible does tell us that many places that the Lord wants us to persevere, and you have such a huge story of perseverance and in such a jam-packed amount of time. So you came through in December. You had, what'd you say, 134 total? Okay. And then I'm assuming that you're continuing to write this year. Now that you're feeling a little bit better, have you doubled that that goal, or what do you
I have not. No. And it's funny because I had a group of about 15 people who challenged me to do 240 by 40, because I'll be 40 this year. Okay. In August. And at first I was going to do it because I conned them into giving me ideas to do it. But as the time got closer, I said, you know what? I don't have to do this by August. I can do it by December. Mm-hmm. And then I said, you know what? I don't have to do it at all.
Right. Yeah.
I'm
sorry, go ahead.
And so I let the 240 by 40 go.
Okay.
Girl, Go Eat a Cookie was a God book.
Before we get to that one right there, I just want to ask, mm-hmm. This motivation that you have. I mean, is it something that, and this is, I guess, maybe a curiosity question for me, but I'm assuming that a lot of people out there may want to hear this as well. Is it something that where you kind of get in a rhythm, it's kind of easier to crank things out, or is it just your super motivation, or do you think it's just, the talent that God has bestowed upon you, a combination of all of these things? Because somebody would say, gosh, this person writing one book in a lifetime is an achievement for most people, right? And so then you say, oh, I'm going to write several books, and then you're saying you've written over 100. You're going towards your 200 possibly at some point, maybe. And people say, that's just That's unimaginable. That's what I think about when I think about these pastors like Tony Evans and Joyce Myers, and every time you turn around, they've got another book, and my head is like, I can't wrap it around how they do this. They just crank them out. So, can you talk a little bit about your motivation for all that and how you even find the energy? Not even talking about your sickness, but talking about just for the normal everyday person, how do you get that motivation to work towards that goal?
My personal mantra is I write my way through life and business, and writing is my cross. And I adapted that because as a coach, I use my books to coach. Mm-hmm. So if I get a book idea, I get it out there, because there is someone somewhere, sometime, somehow, in some way that's gonna need that something that I put in that book. Also, I'm the queen of repurpose. I am the poster child for repurposing. I have turned lives into books. I have turned series of blog posts into books. I have turned talks from speaking engagements into books. I take special requests from time to time. And it's funny because I can start posting something on Facebook and people will be like, you trying to tell us something? Are you hashing out book ideas? And then, they're messaging me a message. They're like, I won't tell nobody. Is this going to be a book? Sometimes I'll tell them. And sometimes I'll be like, questions that need answers. I'm terrible. I know. But if I had to say what was my biggest motivation, it would have to be my 6th grade teacher. When I was 11, I was 11. I hadn't turned 12 yet. When I graduated from the 6th grade, going into middle school, I will never forget. She looked my mom dead in the face and said, Miss Terry, never stop Tammie from writing. She's good.
I like it.
So that has been a driving force behind everything. And yes, she does know what I've done. I was able to reconnect with her at the beginning of 2020 before I went down. And so she knows what I've done. We communicate, still from time to time. And she's bought a book or two. So I am just someone who believes that the blank page in the written word is going to outlast us all. Mm. And I am one who took the Les Brown quote literally, where he said that the graveyard is the richest place in the world, because that's where you're going to find. I didn't hear anything else he said until he said the books that were never written. Mm. And so a lot of people say, I want to leave here empty. I want to leave here empty. I want to leave here empty. I'm going to make sure of it. I joke with my friends and clients sometimes. I says, during the rapture, Jesus is going to be trying to take me up, and I'm going to be on my laptop trying to hit the publish button on Amazon. Like,
oh, gosh. Oh, wow. That's hilarious.
And they said that Jesus is literally going to be like dragging me while I'm like pulling my laptop. Like, I got to push the button. I'm like, I gotta push the button one more time. Just let me push the button. And they said, you know what, we can totally see that. Like, I already have people that were like, you know what, if we see you, we're snatching your laptop and we're like letting it fall down the earth. Like, so I I am one. I know what God has given me. I know what He's put in my head and heart to do. I've seen what my books can do. And it's been the biggest blessing, just simply because people have been helped. People have not just started businesses, but people have saved their marriage. People have saved their relationships with their kids. Just people have stopped making excuses. And just a myriad of things. And I'm truly grateful. I am. I don't take my gift lightly.
I love that.
And people are like, oh my gosh, you blink and there's a book. And I'm like, leave me alone. Just leave me alone and buy it. It's going to help you.
I think that the idea of repurposing is so amazing. And I agree with you 100% on that. But when you have the inspiration and you want to reach people and help people and serve, I think that God, he awards you with, or he rewards you, not awards you, he rewards you with, goodness, because you are being obedient and you are serving. And, one of the things that you always hear people talk about, trying to find their purpose in life, everybody's trying to find their purpose. And we're told that we are given our gifts and we are given our talents. God sees us, before we are even formed in the womb. He knows who we are. He knows each hair on our head. And He has made us for a purpose. And you are, just pursuing that wholeheartedly. And I love that. But many people are intimidated. They have fear. They're not confident. Maybe they didn't have that teacher when they were 11 that said, hey, don't stop doing this, you're great at it. Maybe they had somebody who criticized them instead, and so they have a lot of difficulty stepping up to that and saying, you know what, I can. And I even say, as a mom, and you and I talked about this before the recording, we both are homeschool parents now. I've entered that world this year. And as a mom, I try to teach my kids not to say the word can't. I remember when I was a little girl, my dance teacher had the word can't up in the studio, and it had the circle and the slash, through it, like, don't say the word can't, And so I try to instill that in my kids, but they really, really struggle at times with this inability to achieve those goals. And I know as adults, sometimes that's even more difficult because of all the experiences that we have. And you say no excuses. How do you combat that inability to, really move forward and pursuing that goal and persevering when, somebody comes up with the excuses and they said, well, you don't understand. I went through all of this. And, I had that teacher or that person X amount of years ago that really kind of stomped on me and, really took away my confidence. Is there some kind of advice that you have for that person who really needs to be courageous, really, and step into their calling?
You have to understand that people like that do exist, and that those are not people whom you're meant to serve. There's a difference between people that you can help and people who you can serve. And I've been there. When I wrote my first two books, actually in college, I remember I felt grown because I was 19 and I got invited to like this rich people's wine and cheese like party, like reading type thing. And it was like all of these affluent people that made like billions of dollars. And they told me that things in my book happened too quickly, that the stories were predictable, and that no one would ever like them. Yet here I am, 19 years old. I'm in college. I performed one chapter of the book that they criticized most in a theater class. And my theater teacher said, "Where's the rest of it?" And when I actually published my first book back in September of 2015, my dad was my biggest critic. And he told me that I wrote the writing was under my education level, that it was a slap in the face to parents, that I should be ashamed of myself, and it was riddled with grammatical errors, and that I needed to pull it off the shelf. That hurt because this was my dad. And not only was it my dad, but my dad is my only living parent. So here I am going to sit down with my dad to address his concerns. And I picked up his copy of the book. I looked through it and he says, "Yeah, I highlighted the things that you needed to look at." There were 2 highlights out of 51 pages. 2.
That's riddled with errors, right?
Riddled with errors. And he says to me, "You keep repeating this and you keep repeating this. And when you told your story, during the book, why did you, use this word, or why did you say it this way?" This was a grown man reading a devotional meant for middle school and high school girls.
Wow.
And as I was kind of venting and just emptying out to my husband, he says to me, he says, "Babe, that book isn't for him."
Yeah.
So I made the decision to simply not tell him what I was doing anymore. And when I wrote my second book on Proverbs 31 and let him read a chapter of that, he said, "Now this is how my daughter is supposed to write. This is much better than that other book that you put out. Because when you told me that that was the way that teenagers speak, I just thought it was just trash." He said, "But this is so much better." But even then, he was still critical because he said that I was out of line by writing about Proverbs 31 from a business standpoint. This is strictly teaching on the home. Then why does it mention that this woman had employees?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's that. So I had to realize that the people who were coming against me in the beginning, those were people that I could help, yes, but those were not the people whom I was meant to serve. There's a difference. So now When I look at just those two books now, I think about the woman who walked up to me in the community center doing volleyball practice and said to me, "Your book helped me talk to my daughter."
Lovely.
Then with the one of Proverbs 31, I think about the woman who got to chapter 2, where I talk about honoring your husband in your business, who stopped me in the middle of our call and said, "Tammie, I've got some things I need to settle with my husband. I'll call you back."
Mm.
She called me 6 months later and said she'd made things right with her husband and was ready to continue.
Oh, I love it. That is awesome.
So it's kind of a take the meat and spit out the bones type thing, because not everybody who is offering you an alternative or offering you a plan B is doing so with your best interests at heart.
Right.
As I say in one of my books, there's a difference between constructive criticism, playing devil's advocate, and throwing shade.
Absolutely. And I think that we always have that, well, you're always going to have critics. And I think the more that you allow yourself to be vulnerable, the more you're going to recognize that. And you just have to kind of say, okay, well, not everybody's going to like me. And I will be the first to say, I started off my business, I had trouble with that. I hate conflict. And, when somebody decides that they don't like something that I'm doing, oh, why? I think a lot of entrepreneurs actually, deal with that when they have their first criticism. But, even in the home or even with your loved ones, I think a lot of times there will be one person who decides that they know what's better for you. And maybe that's not for everybody, but, I know I certainly have had that where it came from a lack of understanding in the path I had chosen to take. And for good reasons. Sometimes people, just want what's best for you, but they think they know what's best. They don't realize that they might be wrong. And so that criticism comes across, it's pretty harsh, and it's worse when you really care about that person. So I can only imagine that coming from your dad is really, really difficult to take. And I know somebody out there listening, if you have that person in your life, just, I remember the word take it with a grain of salt, the phrase take it with a grain of salt. And it's maybe easier said than done, but you really have to know that not everybody's going to be your audience, just like you said earlier.
Yeah, like the social media meme says, I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and that's okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's nice to be unique, and it's nice to stand firm in what you believe God wants you to do. And I've been learning a lot about that in the last year myself, just knowing that it doesn't matter if I please the world. It doesn't matter if, you or the next person thinks that what I'm doing is right. All that matters is that I'm being obedient to the Lord, and I'm trying to serve him and his kingdom. So tell me a little bit about, gosh, I hope I'm not saying it wrong, but is it Girl Go Eat a Cookie? Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that. That sounds so interesting.
So, Girl Go Eat a Cookie and Then Handle Business is the full title of the book. This was what I said earlier. This was a God book. I had zero intentions of putting anything out in 2021. I told people that the only way that would happen was if I ended 2020 on an odd number, and I didn't. So I said, I'm not right. Like all of my 5-year-old came out, all of it. And then God says,
Haha,
you're funny. So I was listening online to a conference held by my church. As a church planners conference, preachers conference. And gentlemen got up and preached about the Apostle Paul getting up after being stoned and what it took for him to do that. And I'm sitting in the middle of my bed, like crying oceans. And I'm texting my husband. I'm like, do you hear this guy? And I'm saying, like, I was so broken and done. I couldn't even take notes. And the notes, seriously, the only notes that I ended up with were his 5 main points and the scriptures that they came from. And I remember I wrote them on sticky notes and then I taped them to my bedroom wall on my side of the bed. And in the direction that I normally wake up in the morning. And I told my husband, I said, I think I know why this is there. And he said, I do too. So I took those same 5 points and the scriptures that went with them. And I had to have a title that screamed Tammie. And I am prone to tell people to go eat a cookie or that they need a nap. And I remember doing a Facebook post where I actually told somebody to go eat a cookie. It was absolutely hilarious. And so that became the title of the book. And I talked about what happens when we get knocked down in life, faith, family, ministry, education, business, and our career. And what it takes and how those 5 things, which is grace, grit, growth, gratitude, and graduation day, when it all comes to fruition and you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm done. And when I did the book, I felt a literal heaviness to stop and focus. And I remember telling my husband, I said, I need to protect this. I'm talking copyright, trademark, anything I can do with it. And just from reading over my shoulder, he said, I agree. And it has turned into its own animal. The book isn't even 3 months old. Okay. And I've done 5 conferences. 5 conferences based on the book. I've done 4 podcasts based on the book. Even while being in quarantine. I wasn't the one with COVID. It was my husband and my oldest daughter. But I was still doing interviews. I was still, doing speaking engagements and things like that, just off of this book. And then I launched the product line. So there's a mask and a t-shirt and keychains and stickers and just an abundance of different things. But the whole gist behind Girl Go Eat a Cookie and then handle business is saying, look, stuff is going to happen. Mm-hmm. And it's going to take grace, grit, growth, and gratitude to get up after that knockdown and reach graduation day.
I love it. And I remember actually when that happened, because if you were not here for the Kingdom Women Summit in April, Bearing Fruit, Tammie was one of our speakers. And so I actually remember her talking about some of the stuff as well during that time. So I am excited to share the book. Tammie, do you have any maybe some final encouragement for the person who is out there and they really want to get started, but maybe they're just having a little bit of I don't know, maybe they're letting the excuses come, maybe they're having a little bit of a difficult time getting over that first hump. Sometimes it just takes a little extra oomph to get over that first hump and get going. Maybe they have big dreams, and they just need a little encouragement. What can you give them?
I'm reminded of something that my mom told me as a teenager and a young adult before she passed away. But she used to always tell me, use what you can and what you have until you can get what you want.
Mm-hmm.
Learn to use what is around you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you see somebody like me or somebody like Christina who you want to sit at their feet and the money's not there, there's still stuff you can do.
Mm-hmm.
And people, they're like, well, what do you mean? Do they have an email list, business page, Facebook group, mastermind, membership, online course, book, ebook, audio series? I have gotten probably upwards of $1 million in values worth of coaching simply being in groups and on email lists and things like that, and making sure whoever that coach was knew I was there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I tell people this all the time. Out of the 136 books I've done, with the covers, only 7 of my covers were done by professional designers. And out of those 7, I only paid for 2.
Wow.
I have not paid a publishing company a dime.
Wow.
Once a friend of mine told me that publishing on Amazon was free.
Mm-hmm.
I figured out how to do it, and now I get on Amazon's nerves.
So, I love the fact that what you're saying, it really goes back to just being a good steward of what you're given, and waiting till you get more. And I noticed with the Lord, that's really a common thing where he gives you a little bit and tests you. And then when you do well,
He gives you the more, and he gives you some more, and he gives you some more, and then he opens the floodgates.
yeah, yes, yes.
Because I tell people all the time, obedience is a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell this final story because I know you are probably running out of time. But my obedience in writing was what built my business.
Mm.
When I wrote The Virtuous Businesswoman inspired by Proverbs 31, I did not want to include verses 11 and 12. I did not, because that's where they talked about, honoring her husband, and she should do him good and not evil all the days of his life. And all of that stuff, we kind of look sideways at that one, sometimes. But I didn't want to put those 2 verses in my book. Now, I kept the one about her children rising up and calling her blessed, because There are women at different stages of motherhood that became mothers in different ways, be they single, married, or what have you. And so I told God, I said, God, I don't want to put those 2 verses in there. Because if I do, then single women won't buy my book. Mm-hmm. And God says, put it back. I'm like, no. And he's like, put it back. I'm like, put it back. And so I got smart. I told God, I said, okay, God, I'm going to put those verses back in my outline, but you have to tell me what to say. And God said, perfect. And my pen just started moving.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
My pen just started moving. So when the book came out, that was exactly what happened. Single women came to me and said I could relate to the book, but not as much as I wanted to because I'm not married. Mm-hmm. And I told God, I said, see, I told you I shouldn't have put those verses back in there. Now, here I am trying to pitch this book to churches and different organizations because nobody will buy it. And God says, okay, keep thinking that. Keep thinking that. That book introduced me to the people that led to me gaining over $1 million in coaching for free. Mm. And I actually have a recorded talk on that. I have 2 of them actually, where I explained that and how that happened and who they were and what the benefit was. And today, I can go back to me doing what God told me to do with that book as being the reason why I'm still standing in business. Mm-hmm. Because that book introduced me to the person who challenged me to start doing workshops. It led to me writing my 3rd book, which is my book on excuses. And that was when I met the person who was responsible for me getting the radio show that I have. I met one of the graphic designers who redid the cover for the book and exchanged services with me instead of charging me $300. Yeah. So you have to understand, as the hymn goes, which is one of my favorites, little is much. But when you do with it what he told you to do, you get some things done. And I understand that everybody has their moment. Ask Christina what I talked about in April, and she'll tell you about those moments. But everybody has their moments. And it's not about having the moment, it's what you do with it. Mm-hmm. That matters. I could have given up when I had that spinal tap. I could have let that dream haunt me for the rest of my days. But I say, you know what? I'm crying. I'm hurting. I'm in pain. I can't even carry my laptop properly. But what am I telling my daughters? What am I showing them? If I have 80% of my strength and I don't try, what am I telling them? My 17-year-old sat in the middle of my hallway and cried with me. So you have to learn to leverage your strong days. Mm-hmm. Leverage your good days. Ask for help. Mm-hmm. I surrounded myself with the people from that dream that I knew in real life who wouldn't let me quit, who were ready to type for me if my hands went. Nehemiah tells us to fight for a reason. There's somebody who wants you to come down off of your wall. You can't do it. I know you're in pain. I know you can't see. I know you can barely hear. I know that your speech is slurred. But it can be done. Somebody's waiting for you to do it because you're overcoming, and your growth, as I say in my book, has nothing to do with you. Because it's going to be the people whom we persevere to help that give the real testimony, not you.
Yes. It is about service. It is about being able to reach people through our experiences, to let them know that they are not alone and that they can renew hope and work in their purpose, and that they pursue God with all their might, and that He is there. And that is why you are here talking to me and those of you who are listening on Faith Breathed Hope for the same reason. Is all about perseverance through our circumstances and being able to know that God is going to use us for His kingdom. We just have to be obedient and say yes. So, Tammie, I am so thrilled just to have you here and have this conversation with you today. Would you mind telling the audience where they can find you? We know Amazon.
Yeah.
Where else?
But make sure you spell, yes, Amazon. You can find me, but make sure you spell my first name right. It's Tammie.
Okay.
But you can get, you can find me on Amazon. You might want to grab a cookie or two and something to drink and a sandwich. My Amazon listing is about 9 pages long.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So you might need a snack.
Curl up with a blanket.
Yeah, curl up with a blanket and just scroll. Yeah. Just scroll. You can find me on Facebook. I do accept personal friend requests at Tammie Polk or Tammie T Polk. I have 2 Facebook profiles. So if you just shoot me a message or some type telling me that you heard me here, I will accept. You can follow me on Facebook at Professionally Sassy LLC, on Instagram at Professionally Sassy, or on Twitter at Profession Sassy, because Professionally Sassy was too long for Twitter. So it's Profession Sassy. You can also find me at Dynamically Different Author Tammie T Polk on Facebook, or Dynamically Different ASC on Instagram, which is my book-based Instagram. So that's where you can find me. My website, www.professionallysassy.me. I do have a store on my website that has items, that has books that I actually have on hand, can sign for you and put in the mail. So if you want a living, breathing, autographed by the author copy, yes, go to my website. So I do that. So yes.
Fantastic. You can just find Tammie in all the places, and we will list those places.
All the places
to link up to make sure you don't miss her. Thank you so much, Tammie. I really have enjoyed this interview. For those out there who are listening, continue to be blessed and bless others, and we'll see you next time. And I want to thank you for joining us on Faith Breathed Hope, where you gain inspiration and motivation to renew hope and discover purpose in any circumstance. Please like and share this podcast and give us a review on iTunes. Be blessed.